welcome to Nourishing the Mother, where inspired women talk about the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness. We ask, in what ways can we show up more fully, live more meaningfully, parent more wholly, and love more unconditionally? How can we mine the wisdom from the experiences of our lives and expand into those challenges? If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs, so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way. And if you feel like giving a little back to this free content, please become a patron of the show and receive extra member benefits for less than a coffee a month. Or you can leave a review on iTunes and Facebook, all of which helps the podcast keep going and reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul. Head on over to patreon.com/NTM podcast to find out more. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is What is Truth Actually? And it comes from a listener's question, and we love listener questions. So please feel free to contact us by email or socials or whatever feels good if you have a question you would just love for us to riff on or answer, and we would be absolutely tickled pink to do so. So before we jump into today's delicious Q&A on what is truth actually, I'd love to remind you to jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au, scroll on down to the red banner and sign up to join our community. You drop in your email address once every so often. We send you an email with everything that's happening in the world so you can pick and choose where you'd love to dive deeper, and we promise we will not spam you. So nourishingthemother.com.au.
So this question or this email comes from a beautiful long-time listener of the podcast and member of our community, Anastasia. And so thank you, Anastasia, for asking this, and we're delighted to dive into this in the podcast. So I'm going to just read out the email and then we're going to go from there. So Anastasia says, "Hi, Bridget and Julie. Could you guys riff on a podcast sometime about truth? Truth is something we are taught by society and our parents to value. And we are supposed to find and speak our truth. And we are supposed to nourish and guide our children to grow so that they can have their truth be heard by the world. I don't know if it's the pandemic or my recent miscarriage that has caused me to question the whole concept of truth. And then I just heard a world-renowned speaker, Abraham Hicks, speak about how truth is irrelevant. She made such a great point, how truth is only a matter of focus. She said, the definition of truth in the vibrational universe you live in is that anything that is focused upon becomes more. And the more that it becomes, the more people gather around and herald it as truth. Truth has nothing to do with anything outside of the perceiver that makes it so. Truth has been rendered irrelevant. I get what I think about whether I want it or not. I would love to hear your version of the truth. When I heard this version, I felt a lift in outside circumstance on me. I think that I have believed that my truth is something that was written before I got here, and that intuition and desire are what guide me to my truth. But in rendering truth irrelevant, I feel a bit free to choose what I focus my life on. And it's also a bit daunting and kind of leaves me with, well, what the fuck is this all for anyway? One of the hardest parts of my miscarriage is questioning the reason why I felt so strongly in having more children. Like, where is that desire coming from? If it's coming from me, then why do I feel so out of alignment with myself when what I want intellectually conflicts with what I want emotionally? It feels like the truth is outside of me. So I value Nourishing the Mother's truth so much, and it serves me and my life so well. Can you riff on this? My very best, Anastasia.
Can you just read that sentence to me again, Bridge, about where is desire coming from if there's conflict between intellect and what was the other? I just want to hear that again.
Yeah. So I was questioning the reason why I felt so strongly. Like, where is that desire coming from? If it's coming from me, then why do I feel so out of alignment with myself when what I want intellectually conflicts with what I want emotionally? It feels like the truth is outside of me.
It's pretty powerful, that last paragraph.
Isn't it? So how do you want to tackle this? Because when I read it, and I read a paraphrasing of Abraham Hicks and the truth in terms of the vibrational universe you live in, I was like, yeah, because whatever you're focusing on right now is expanding in your world. So we're all creating little pockets of realities based on whatever, how the universe is organizing itself around us according to what we're focusing most on. And I mean, one of the most simplistic ways to do this is the example of, like, you buy a new car and you never notice that car on the road and now everybody else is driving it. Like, it's a really basic example, but it illustrates the fact that those cars were always there, but you didn't have a value on seeing them. So you didn't notice them. They were not in your awareness. But now, because you've shifted your focus and your value to see that thing, that is now what you're now able to perceive. Remembering that we can only perceive like less than 1% of all of the input in our environment. So we, of course, wisely filter according to what is most meaningful. So I think that paraphrasing of Abraham Hicks on what truth is quite accurate. And also the truth, I mean, who says what the truth is? I mean, this is going to end up very, very, I know where this is going to go.
Down a tunnel.
Down a tunnel, Julie. I can see us weaving in history. I can see us weaving in religion. I can see us weaving in the esoteric. And we're going to crumble out of,
we may lose ourselves.
The very foundations on which we build our life upon.
Yeah, it's true. No, I love those conversations, though. I love having existential conversations because I think we always need to be stretched, actually, to find our truth.
Yeah. And that can be deeply uncomfortable.
Right, but I don't actually know that there ever is a truth, right?
Yeah.
Like, because you're continuously seeking for the truth.
You really are. I know. It's a bit of a mindfuck, the whole thing, actually.
It is. So, I mean, I love there's so much that I want to talk about here and just kind of riff with you, Bridge, because I do actually find it a really fascinating topic. Like, what is truth? We want our kids to tell the truth. We feel deceived when someone doesn't tell us the truth. But what is the truth? So I love this because, I mean, you and I would talk about it again, just making it super simple in terms of the truth of a 3-year-old is completely different to the truth of that moment for you as the parent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't render their truth any less true.
Yeah, because for their lens on their world right now, that is the most accurate truth there could be.
Right. And I come across this a lot with couples, and particularly when the masculine partner's like, I can't fucking deal with you, right? You said you wanted this thing and now you don't. You hate that thing and you want this thing and you're changing every 5 seconds and I can't land with you. Like, you're clearly lying or deceiving or, whatever language you want to put on that because you're not static. You're not staying the same. And I think that's a very masculine and patriarchal version of seeing truth, is that truth is one thing and that it's solid and acts as
and unchanging.
Right. Unchanging, stoic, completely predictable set of rules. Because that is a beautiful patriarchal, of which our culture and society is absolutely part of, perception on how we can maintain a level of control when really we're in a ball spinning through space. right?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
control is a complete illusion. So we construct all of these ways in which to make ourselves feel safe. Rules and truth are part of that construction in order for us to feel like we can handle and we can roll and we can deal. What I will always say to these beautiful masculine creatures, no different to you and I would say to these beautiful parents who are dealing with rageful toddlers or babies or whatever the case may be, is that is their truth. When you're in the feminine, the truth is a continuous evolution, because that is creation, that is the feminine, that is the entire construct of this world and soul growth. That's what you're here for, right? Growth and evolution, which means truth will continuously evolve. But that does not mean that the truth you held 5 minutes earlier wasn't the absolute truth of that moment. So,
and also the only truth that you could see in that moment, because it was perfect for you then.
yes. Right. Yeah. So I kind of love Anastasia's last part where she's like, where does this desire come from if there's a conflict between my intellect and my emotionality? The existential crisis of masculine and feminine. You can't marry the two. Like, you're never going to, right? So where does desire come from, and how do you know, how do you find truth? How do you speak truth? How do you teach your children to find their voice and truth in the world? I think we forget that our mind is limited and conditioned by the world in which we are part of as a society, and on top of that, the construction of our ego, which continuously will seek to keep us safe and be self-fulfilling in many ways. Whereas the heart, if we're able to really drop into the space of heart-opened flow, of creative force, of being so in the present moment, you've lost track of everything else and time feels like it flies, that opened heart space, we forget that the heart has 30% more of an energetic field and electrical current than the brain does. And yet we're taught that the brain holds more power than the gut or the heart. And I don't see that as truth. I see that as a very patriarchal conditioning, which keeps us conforming to a lot of truths and rules set outside of us. So where does desire come from? I think that it comes from a mix of soul's guidance, which will always speak to you through emotion and through the center of your heart. Does that mean we continuously just do what we feel like and what our body is telling us to do? No, because this is where the divine union comes in. So you have to know what is an absolute truth that's whispering through your heart when you're in that flow state and you're opened and you're like, I know, like there's a knowing that comes from that heart space. That's where I think desire comes from. And you need the mind that checkpoints it and goes, okay, so how, if this is a real desire, how are we going to make this work? I think the actual conflict comes when we're conditioned to trust the mind more than the heart, but the heart is speaking and yearning. And so we create this inner, I guess conflict. I was trying to find another word for it. This head-heart battleground, rather than actually what it's designed to be is the divine union of this beautiful mind capacity to create and bring focus to amplify feeling, which is what Abraham Hicks is talking about, which becomes the law of manifestation. What do you think?
I love that. I love that, Linda. I love that explanation, because it can be easy to see that as, well, I'm just following my feelings and my soul's calling me this way, and it's just, that was there for me, but now it's not, and this person was right for me, but now they're not, and I'm just evolving so quickly, and, you know, like feeling, and that I love how you brought that in, that check, and that union between the two, because I think that is the ultimate. That's the ultimate. If we got another lens to look at it too, is the dance between the low and high mind too, and the biggest tension of being human is how you tussle between those, how you honor the pleasure that we desire from our bodies and from feeling and from just the deliciousness that life offers, and the desire for instant gratification too often, and the parts of us that seek to find challenges that are meaningful and integrate things that feel difficult as on the way for us, not something that we have to go around or make wrong for ourselves because they don't feel good. So that tussle, I think, is also interesting to look at alongside the masculine and feminine dynamic. And in the case of the body desire, or even the desire for more children, you know, what is a true heart's yearning, and what is because, you know, we also know that, like, in like lower socioeconomic countries or lower developed countries, it's a strategy to have more and more children, not because the heart yearns, but because that's also the dominant dogma of those countries, and that the lower education level often in those kind of countries, the more children, because you're not thinking about what can I create for the world in terms of how I use my mind and my forethought and my visions for what I'm going to create out in the world. I'm thinking about how do I serve my family, and, you know, and I serve my family by creating more children to care for, you know, our needs, and for me when I get older, you know, that's kind of the difference in those levels of thinking. But obviously we're talking here about developed Western countries and Western women, and how we respond to our biological yearning, and then the part of us that kind of goes, but I still don't know if it's for me. And that's what we need to then marry, right? Is what is my authentic truth right here and right now, and what is my wanting in service of? Is it in service of this vision that I have for myself and my family, and how we are going to contribute to this world and to each other? Or is there a part of me that desires to grow my family because I can see that I know how to do that, and I don't know how to do these other things that feel hard, which is another thing that can trap women as well, is this, I know that I love this motherhood and this place I find myself and these young children and this life, and more please, because it's what we know as well.
I totally agree with that. And I love all of that. This is why I love having these conversations with you. The other thing that just like dawned on me when you were speaking then was that, particularly when you're talking about having more children, is that when we're talking about the concept of truth, is how much can you let yourself feel your desire, knowing it might change in the next 5 minutes? Like, how much can you sit in the burn of your truth? How much can you let the flames of your truth burn you in this moment without having a strategy or an agenda that's really just a way out of the burn? And I sometimes think that's the conflict, is we would rather strategize, know the solution or the reason we're burning, because then we can know there's a place for that to go, there's an end, or we can start to drop out of the burn because we can start thinking about it and planning about it and strategizing about it, so we don't need to feel the burn so much. Whereas what I think truth is really, if we're talking about it in the concept of the feminine, is whatever is fully felt in this moment and therefore fully surrendered to? How much can you submit to the burn and feel it until it literally inflames your skin? Like, how long can you sit in that for? At some point it will self-resolve, like any of our emotions. They have a completion cycle, right? What if the purpose is for you to first have the desire and let that burn incinerate you and move so deeply into it without attachment? So I might so deeply, heartbreakingly sob and cry right now about the moment that I want another baby and my body won't let me, or I can't, or can I actually really let myself sink so fully into that yearning and that wanting that I let myself be taken by it, that perhaps even beyond that, I actually let that truth be seen, read, and felt in its fullness by my lover, rather than needing to contort it and reduce and remove myself from my heart's truth, which has long-term and lasting consequences and is just training you to do that. How much, without there being any meaning, it might not even mean that I really want to have another baby. But in this moment, this is the truth that's coming through me. Can we just be with that? Because in the next moment, the truth might be, I'm in fucking orgasmic ecstasy. Let's be in that truth rather than moving away from it or having an out for it or a reason or a, like, what if we just stopped attaching meaning to what the desire means?
Yeah, and just feel the desire.
Just sat in the desire, sat in the truth. Just let it be there without attachment. How much can you feel that? How much can you extend and expand your capacity to hold intensity in your body? Because that, I think, is probably our greatest training ground for anything and everything ever. How much abundance, an abundance of energy, an abundance of sensation, and an abundance of heart opening, an abundance of an abundance of wealth, an abundance of love. It doesn't matter. It's all, pick what's most inspiring to you in this moment to practice what it is to hold abundance in your body. So I also see that conflict as a bit of a strategy out of something that's there to be your training ground. Who knows if it's actually about another baby or not? In this moment, that's the closest thing your brain wants to jump to because we're meaning making and we go like that. Feel attach. Like, what would happen if we slowed that down and there was no attachment?
And actually feel into that long enough to allow it to complete itself. And then when everything's burned away, then what's left? Right. Because often it's not the thing you think it is.
Right.
But it's on the pathway to the truth of what it is that you want.
It's all training. But we often won't let it train because we're too busy strategizing to move away from the thing that's trying to take us towards our truth. And in that, we're trying to move ourselves away. Like, it's just like, it is such a brain fuck when you think about it.
The same thing can even be said with, like, holding our child's emotions.
Yeah.
Like, how much can you allow yourself to be with all that they're revealing in this moment and resist the desire or the urge or the inclination or the just impulse to try to fix the thing, avoid the thing, change the thing. You know, it happened to me this morning with my daughter dropping her off at kinder and her shoes wouldn't fit. It wasn't just about the shoes not fitting right. And the moment that I, like, dropped deeper into removing any agenda that I had about being anywhere at any time, or removing any outcome focus that I had for her moving out of where she was, the energy completely changed. And she was able to complete in a way that she never could had I had an agenda to move her from anything, to move her, right? And it was just that remembrance again, like, how wide can you be here? Like, how much can you expand to be and hold this without needing to change it? which is also what we're asking ourselves to do when we let ourselves feel into the full desire. Like, what if you could give yourself permission? The practice of holding our child is also a practice of holding ourselves. Because so often what gets in the way of fully meeting our child is our inability to fully meet what's required of seeing in ourselves in order to hold what they bring us, or in order to see what they're trying to reveal to us. So I think it's just the most incredible practice of seeing yourself, is to pull and remove more and more of what's in the way of allowing their expression in the moment. Because your capacity to allow their expression in the moment, or their full feeling in a moment, is also how much you're willing to be the container for the full burning of your own desire, right?
Mm. Mm.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense to me. I'm just really letting myself feel it. So, what is truth? I think when we're talking about truth for our children, that we're talking about what is an absolute truth for you without you needing to contort it for someone or something outside of you. And that doesn't matter if it's a parent or a partner or a school or society. The moment you have to contort that, there's a deviation from what is absolutely true for you. Is that necessarily something that's bad or wrong? I mean, I think that's a totally different moral conversation. But in terms of what is truth, truth will always evolve. I think we've got to stop looking for there's one truth, because there isn't. The world was flat and now we know it's round, right?
Yeah.
Like, truth is always evolving along with human consciousness. Like, there's nothing ever for us to hold on to, because it's like water. It will just slip through our hands anyway. So it's just a practice of being as true as you can to any moment, and that's truth.
And also recognizing that for whatever truth you hold, the universe is organized in such a way that there has to be somebody who holds a completely opposite truth to you, and that truth is just as valid as your own. But yet we look to organize the world to reflect our truth and gravitate toward people who we think share a truth that we share. So, for example, I ran a masterclass recently on expanding your family, and a couple of the comments were around, just concerned about like whether I can bring a child into this world, like the state of the planet and environmental concerns, and I really shared, like I really get like that consideration, because there was a time in my life where that was a truth to me, like that I felt that, but I no longer feel that as a truth. So I don't see any barrier in the way of a desire to bring another child in the world, because I don't see that there's not room for that. But that is a truth that may be at odds and very vehemently argued by some who have a different view. And so how can you hold those two opposites and still function?
Yeah.
Well,
knowing that probably neither of them are a truth anyway, and at the same time, total truth. It's so good, like when you think about it, right?
But I think it's also about being able to, how much polarity can you make space for and not shut down and not close, like this is that as well. But I also think that there's an artistry that comes in relationship when you can see another person's truth that's at odds with your own and still respect that.
Yeah, I think that's the trade.
Because the degree to which you can do that is also the degree to which you will be less likely to guilt and shame your past self because of your past self's truth. Because it can be really easy as we grow and evolve and expand our values and our truths and what things mean to us, to then look at our past versions of ourselves and collapse into shame and awkwardness and guilt about like who we were or what we said. But the degree to which we do that is also how much we can see the wholeness of the world and love into differences and love into the diversity of others, because just like that incarnation of ourselves was perfectly necessary and meaningful, even if we might want to label it as dysfunctional, we might want to say that we were uneducated or whatever label we might have on ourselves in our past, that was perfectly necessary and needed in the world and in yourself for where you were at in your own evolution. So I think it's a beautiful practice to even notice, like, when you do that, because a lot of women can do that with, like, you know, the rose-colored glasses, right? That you look back upon, or that you look forward upon, or that you kind of think, if only I didn't do that, or didn't say that, or wasn't that person, you extrapolate out to who you are now and make all these stories. And it's like, the practice is, how perfect was she then for who she was and where she was showing up in the world. Yeah. I love that, to hold that as a, you know, a pondering.
Yeah, me too. What do you think about Anastasia's point about we ask our children, or we seek for our children to find and speak their truth in the world?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't tend to, I mean, my kids are pretty young. I don't tend to use that kind of language yet with them. I more seek to reflect back to them as accurately as I can who I see them to be, so that they get a reflection that their personality is evolving in as close alignment with what their soul's seeking to evolve them to as possible, if that makes sense. So there's not too great a distortion between who they're desiring to be and who I want them to be, or who the world wants them to be. So, because the more intact I think any of us can stay in terms of what our evolution is asking us to do and be, then almost like the less we're going to have to say to them, seek your truth and find your truth. And I mean, the desire for our child to speak their truth and find their truth is often really a void that we have. It's like the parent who really wants their child to be body confident. They want that because they're not. So you want the child to speak their truth and live their truth, because on some level you don't feel like you are. So,
and because it's too painful to parent and to watch, right? Because you're watching the piece of you outside of you that you can't ignore, break or hurt. And that hurt of seeing it outside of you is greater than the hurt that you can reconcile inside of you, although it's the same trait.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think when you see it, we see it mostly at significant ages that our children meet those significant ages for us. And so a lot of that is leaning into that part of us, like what's here that I'm wanting them to speak on or embody, that I'm still trying to reconcile within myself. Like, what happened to me when I was 8? How can I see her? How can I be with that? Because also the more that we be with that and kind of call that home, what our child then reflects changes because of that entanglement.
It's quite an entanglement. Is there anything that we've left out of Anastasia's email?
Having a look. Anastasia talks about she had believed that her truth was something that was written before she got here, and the intuition desire what guide her. But in rendering truth irrelevant, I feel a bit free to choose what I focus my life upon. So I find this is interesting to riff on in terms of this idea of like soul contract versus free will, human behavior patterns versus your soul. I think actually there's an entanglement of both of those two things. I think I don't know how much I subscribe to this idea that you came to learn exact lessons and that's what you've signed up for, versus you came here with a set of wisdom that has matched a set of voids. Like, so your soul has come here with a body of knowledge and a desire to expand upon and deepen that body of knowledge or experience. And then our human form has experienced just the right voids that are going to tap that. But the form of which those voids are experienced and what we focus on in order to build that knowledge, I think we have more wheel around. In terms of, because we can change our values, or not change our values, but we can build mastery and change our neural pathways, which is then going to change our perceptions, which is then going to shift what we bring into our world, which changes our outcomes. So that's that dance that I see happening there. And that also we know that all human behavior is patterned, and that we either complete our parents or we continue the same patterns. So that meaning that an example of this would be like my mum was not feeling like her marriage could handle having another baby, and that there was something that she desired but didn't complete on. And that was a real stretching of my relationship to be able to expand and hold and complete on, because I sensed that it was not even a belief that was mine, but that was a pattern that I was in, and that I had to even do the work on through each birth to be able to complete that. And then there's other patterns. Like, I come from a very strong lineage of wives and mothers. Very strong. And so that pattern I'm continuing, because my soul probably chose to continue, right? Like, I mean, we don't know that, but that there's some kind of like order to that. It's these esoteric, existential things we can ponder, but that's my thoughts on it. What do you say, Jules?
No, I love all of these conversations. I was just trying to sit more. I'm having trouble getting Anastasia's that sentence to kind of land in my body. And I'm not sure why that is. Yeah.
So she says, when I heard this version, I felt a lift in outside circumstance on me. I think that I have believed that my truth is something that was written before I got here, and that intuition and desire are what guide me to my truth. But in rendering truth irrelevant, I feel a bit free to choose what I focus my life on. And it also is a bit daunting and kind of leaves me with, well, what the fuck is this all for anyway?
See, I get stuck there because it seems like a paradox within that sentence. Because if I consider that truth, because it seems to me, and tell me if I'm reading this wrong, that what she's alluding to is that truth was written before she was born. The truth existed outside of her, or largely is what the masses focus on, right, and then dictate as truth. So when those two pressures externally are removed, she feels a sense of freedom, but at the same time questioning, but I thought that I was always led by my soul and my desires. Whereas now, if none of that is true, where does that leave me? Is that what she's saying?
I think that's what she's saying. She's kind of like, well, what's it for anyway if I can choose? I think that's what she's alluding to. That if truth is merely a construct,
yeah,
then what am I being led?
Yeah.
Or where am I being led?
Yes, but then I still would question there if really what she has experienced is intuition and the burning of truth and desire through your heart, or manipulated, diluted versions of that fit in with an external culture or expectation.
Yeah.
Because
that's a good nuance to me.
There wouldn't be and a sense of alleviation that there is no such thing as truth. Like I hear that externally and I'm like, yeah, cool, but I have such a burning passion for my truth. There's no sense of like, well, fuck, where does that leave me? Or, oh my God, now like the world is my oyster. I'm completely free to choose.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, so if you, I mean, even if you and I considered like in terms of like maybe parenting, or you would consider your mission, but if we look at like, even if someone or all these external forces told me, it doesn't matter if black children are going to be fine, it's not even a big deal, just do it. Like, who even cares about what the truth is? I wouldn't feel a sense of alleviation on that because my truth burns strongly than like that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's why I think I keep getting stuck on it. That's why I was like, it's not sitting well, because it actually feels like a contradiction is the word I'm looking for. A contradiction in itself, or perhaps a mixing or a muddying of what the truth of desire is.
Yeah. Well, but your truth doesn't care what anybody says or thinks.
No.
Your truth burns more strongly and potently than the opinions of anybody.
Yes.
And any authority.
Yes, even when that authority says this is truth, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good way to find it, the distinction too, is like, what is me doing this because I think I should, or it's my culture, or it's what's expected of me, and what is at the center of my heart, what I am committed to, regardless of what any outside voices have to say about it.
Yeah.
Or regardless of whatever cultural shifting and changing may happen.
Yeah. Like, let's even talk about this in terms of the construct of you and I choosing to do work, life, and business on our terms in the way that we consciously choose to do life, and that we choose to believe as truth the entanglement of abundance and the life you want to live with motherhood, not separate to, or that motherhood diminishes or you can't do the two together.
Yeah.
There is an enormous amount of external pressure that says, that holds just that narrative.
They have to run in silos, kind of separate from each other, and it's an either or, and that it never works to combine the two, and that on some level you're always going to be diminished.
Right. And I mean, I could have a conversation with 10 women in a day that are like, you know, it's not possible for me. I can't do that. Who am I to? I don't see how that's possible. All of the thousands of reasons they have why it's not true. And yet I will stand here and go, yeah, I get that's your truth. That's where you're at. That's how you see the world. But this is my truth because that's the life I'm living. But I had to have my truth before that became my reality that confirms the truth I'd already chosen.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And that the outer forces weren't strong enough to diminish that, like the
internal truth.
Well, yeah, and also it's almost like a pilot light that's always burning for that truth, so that your life has to organize in such a way to honor that. Whereas if it was like a weaker pilot light, it could have been diminished or put out by the louder cultural force.
Which is exactly the Abraham Hicks statement, right? One person says, this is truth, and everyone focuses on that truth, and then it becomes the truth, and therefore the lived experience, which confirms the original truth, and on we go in a cycle. You still pick your truth. I choose to believe this. Like even you talking about soul contracts, right? You came from a religious background, but you choose to believe this, so that becomes your truth.
Yeah.
I find really interesting.
And I even consider this in terms of like, we consider this contract as a construct of patriarchal motherhood, and this sense that no matter what you do, you're always going to feel guilty, or no matter what you do, there's vested interest in the way of you feeling fulfilled. But if you constantly look for evidence of that as well, how is that going to be a fulfilling experience of mothering and motherhood, to constantly feel like there are people out there trying to diminish you, versus choosing to have the most wildly fulfilling experience, even within the constraints that you're provided, or that we live under. You know what I mean?
Mm. So I think you get to pick your truth, but the true definition of truth is, does it burn and consume you? Can you let it? How much can you let it? How much can you be with your own truth? Because I think that's still
and when you say, the point of asking that question is also because your own truth will be and has to be deeply polarizing.
And can you stand for your truth, right? Because how much of us will self-minimize our truth? Oh, well, I can't bring my desire or my truth in this moment to have another baby because I've already decided and attached that it means these things about me, or it means these things about my husband, or I know that he's going to, and I've attached he'll be this way, which means we'll be this way, which means this will happen, which means that we've already attached 1,000 things to the original thing that was completely neutral and benign. We have to watch the attachments that we make, because our humanity, our reptilian brain is continuously meaning making. Continuously, right? This is the whole thing with signs. What's a sign and what's not a sign? Because people can make meaning out of the most random events.
I know.
You just have to remember that we're continuously attaching and creating meaning, which is why the deeper spiritual practice is on non-attachment and removing meaning.
I'm just laughing because I remember I was having a moment when I was pregnant with Sylvie, and I was like so emotional, and I was like, I'm just gonna go for like a walk, really, really like brisk walk. And I said to my mum, was kind of like, all right. And I think I was like, I wasn't used to my emotionality, and I think I was wrestling with like who this baby was and what the name was going to be. And I come back and I said, Mum, I've seen so much purple through her, so her name must be Violet. And Mum was like, yeah, or it's spring and there's lots of jacaranda trees in bloom. And I was like,
that's gold.
Touché.
I love that story.
Isn't it great?
It's so great. It's so great. I really love it. Right?
It kind of speaks to it, you know. Was it a sign, or was the bird just lose its feather right where you were?
100%, 100%. But that's why we've just always got to do the self-checks. I think the brain is beautiful for that, but not for removing us from what is an innate desire, and therefore guidance, because that's what it is. It's a guidance towards and through something without there being an end goal, and that's the feminine, right? That's the destabilizing, chaotic, no end goal. I have to just surrender and be in the chaos without knowing its purpose.
And I also think this is interesting too. I was just thinking even about like our children and following their truth and their autonomy and respecting them. You know, right now, Sylvie's at this age where it's like, well, if you won't let me take that, then I'm not buying a bush kinder. You know, and so if you was really committed to like honouring your child's independence, then you might go, oh, okay, all right, well then I won't go then because it's not what you really want today. When in fact, she just needed the containment that said, we're still going to go, and it's okay for you to feel upset that we're not taking that thing. Because she wanted to like throw the baby out with the bathwater because, you know, it wasn't perfect for her, right? And it's a little bit like, you know, our own psychology and our own like need to have things the way we want to have them. Well, is it us following our truth, or is it actually just us needing some containment to know, off we go, we're doing this thing, even if some of these parts aren't all kind of on board right now.
Yeah. Totally. And if you really knew truth and whatever you desire could be yours in any way, would you spend more time being conscious about what you desired and if that was really a desire for you or not? Would you live it a little bit longer? Right? If we were not in lack or scarcity or fear, would you choose more wisely? I think you probably would. Right? If you, like, what a gift it is to be able to be in whatever state of abundance, in whatever area of life it is, to say, I choose this, rather than, well, I have to put up with this, or this is my only choice. They're two very different mindsets when it comes to truth. But if you really sat in what Abraham Hicks quote is speaking to, is really about the law of vibration, right? So if you really knew that anything you truly desired was yours already, would you not spend more time? I mean, this is all of the stories of Aladdin, right? And all of the stories across cultures and history that are about, I read this great one the other day. What was it about the fisherman? Oh, I just had a flashback. I'll have to find it. Across cultures, there's stories about this, right? That you choose your wishes wisely for this very reason. Some choices are made out of responsive states of lack, and yet the ones that have the greatest potency are those made from places of abundance and heart-opened desire to be of service or give something.
Yeah. And there is a vibrational difference between them as well.
So beautiful, Anastasia. We hope that we have riffed in a way that is meaningful for you and perhaps not opened up more doors than closed them. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we would love to hear from any of you who are listening how this landed for you, what it ripples out into your world, what truth you find after you've listened to this, how you see the world, or perhaps how it's changed. And
even ask yourself, sit with that question, am I still choosing this truth?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, you get to choose. And also there can be a point at which one truth burns away and you realize that's not a truth to me anymore. But you can feel unsafe in letting that go because you've built an identity around it. So sit with the question, am I still choosing this as a truth?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. So to connect with you, Bridget,
it's suburbansandcastles.com, and usually
is julietenner.love. And for the month of February, we are collaborating with the household advisor within Soul Driven Motherhood for our month of Liberate, which is all about removing the stuck places in your home with more of a consciousness lens, knowing that the reflective home is reflective of the body home or the mind home. So we want to look at what are the stuck places in your home, how are they reflective of where you're at, and how can we and Tara as the household advisor facilitate you through actually being able to physically and metaphysically manifest the year that you desire. So come and join us in Soul Driven Motherhood. It's just $39 for an entire month, and we are continuously doing cool stuff in there.
We really are. I'm super excited for this year.
Yeah.
Just quietly.
So nourishingthemother.com.au, Nourishing the Mother on Facebook and Instagram. You'll be able to find out about Liberate in Soul Driven Motherhood this month, and we would love to have you join and come and liberate yourself from the stuck places of your home and psyche.
Remember, nourish someone to rock the family.
I was nearly going to jump in there. I was like, it is you, isn't it? I was thinking in my head, is this my bit?
No, you know what I was thinking in my head, just for the listeners' benefit. I was thinking, I need to talk to you, Julie, after we start recording. So can you don't close the Zoom window, keep it on. So just as my message for Julie, now we can wrap up the podcast, which was what you're waiting for me to do. Which is, remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
And if you want to support Nourishing the Mother and all the late nights, the early mornings, the blood, sweat and tears we pour into our art, then please go to patreon.com/NTM podcast and become our patron. As a patron, you're helping all of the cost of operating this podcast, the hosting, the editing, the transcription, helping all of that be completely covered, and joining a community who are all about honouring our journeys and continuing to open. The more support we have, the longer we can last. So become a patron. We'd love to have you. Go to patreon.com/NTM podcast. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.